Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the MKLO show. My name is Earl Mann, and I get the best job in the world to introduce cool people. Cool is a technical term. And today I'm excited because I get to introduce the founder of one of the most exciting companies I found in 2024, which is Keto 5. Dr. Wu, welcome to the show.
Hi, Earl. Pleasure to be here.
I know you're busy. I really appreciate you taking time to share with us this morning. And let's just jump right in. Let's just start with who you are. Give us a little background on who you are, so people know who you are, and then we're going to ease into helping people understand what ketones are and why they might have value.
Okay. So I'm Michael Wool. I'm a physician trained in hospital care, intensive medicine, and immunology. And I am the founder of Keto 5. We've been around for, I think this is our 10th year of operation. And it started sort of in a garage, literally. Uh, One of my longtime friends and patients and now partner, Stan Ho, had come to me with an idea that he had heard that there were ketones that you could drink that could be made into a drink, and it would suppress appetite, and he wanted to lose some weight. So nothing was really on the market at the time, and we started literally in his garage mixing exogenous ketones and trying it out on him, and he did lose quite a bit of weight, and he felt better, which started us on this uh, adventure where he and I made ketones and we gave them to my patients here in Los Angeles and Beverly Hills, and we started a weight loss program, and I did a clinical trial where we had enrolled about 109 patients, and we got 90 of them to finish out the year, and uh, and they were losing on average 10 pounds a month. But what was even more interesting is that people reported lots of anecdotal experiences they had as they were drinking the ketones, and that is their brain felt sharper. Some of them, unbeknownst to us, actually had inflammatory joint diseases and autoimmune diseases, and lo and behold, their hands and knees and hips got less swollen, they had less pain. And I started to explore measurements of inflammation and found that they had dropped really precipitously. And it was this was, well over about 10 years ago. And in the last 5 or 6 years, scientists across the world, including very prestigious universities, have all formed ketone research divisions and proving that exogenous ketones can and do act as the master switch for inflammation, and it also speeds up uh, the neurons of the brain and how cells talk to each other. So anyway, so that's how it all got started, and and as I said, I'm a bench researcher. I've held positions at the National Institutes of Health. um, I was a researcher at UCLA, and some of my work, which has to do with viral replication and drug resistance, which was um, internationally recognized. And actually, my gene chart, which is a genetic analysis of HIV, ended up becoming a piece in the National Archives and the Smithsonian as part of HIV history. The other thing that I'm well known for is the is the discovery and the elaboration of science around HIV-related dementia, and I've transmitted some of that research principle to understanding long COVID and brain fog associated with COVID, because it's actually the same principles.
You are a pioneer, researcher, scientist. I knew this was going to be interesting. So let's do this because we use the word a lot, and I don't want to assume that people let's define some terms a little bit. So, what is a ketone? I know a lot of people are exposed to the ketogenic diet or they hear about the keto diet. But if you wanted to explain what a ketone is, to a non-scientist like myself,
Yeah.
how do that?
Earl, ketones are an essential uh, source of energy for the body. So there are only two kinds of fuels uh, that are allowed, oops, in the body. And one are ketone bodies, of which one is called beta hydroxybutyrate. The other is acetone, and the third is acetoacetate. Now, these are three molecules. The molecule of uh, beta hydroxybutyrate is the largest percentage. About 92% of the ketones in your body are beta hydroxybutyrate. So these things are made in the liver from fat when people have not eaten for a while. And in fact, every morning when you wake up, you have beta hydroxybutyrate in your bloodstream with or without our product, with or without a ketone diet. And this ketone uh, is supplying fuel to your body, just like sugar supplies fuel to your body. So these are the only two kinds of fuel that your body takes: ketone bodies and glucose, and not fructose, and not sucrose, and not maltose. Maltose is in beer, fructose is in so much of our American diet that it's actually kind of dangerous. And it's also in corn and it's in fruit. Um, and so these other sugars, lactose is in milk, and
Mm-hmm.
these are all sugars, but they have to be converted by your body into glucose because glucose is the only molecule. And it's sort of important to understand that ketones on a per milligram basis produces about 40% more energy. And if you think about it, okay, ketones emerge principally as a fuel when you're not eating or a starvation fuel. If
Right.
you don't eat for 24 hours, your ketone levels go really pretty high, which people started doing intermittent fasting to mimic animals because animals have been found to have if they generally live their lives very long and die of natural old age and mechanical failure rather than disease. And that's been shown by animals being having ketone meters and glucose meters and a GPS put on them and followed out birth to death. At the end, if you took out the ones that died of an infectious disease, took out the ones that died of being killed or eaten, and you took out the ones that died of an accident, fell off a cliff, or got burned in a forest fire, the
Right.
remaining animals that had an autopsy showed no evidence of disease to the degree of 90 90% had no evidence of disease in this subpopulation at the end. The other 10% had cancer, asthma, heart disease, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis.
Sounds like humans.
Exactly. But they lived 60 to 80% in ketosis, living off
Interesting.
of ketone fuels. If you did the same experiment in Americans,
Yeah.
you go to a morgue in Las Vegas, okay, at the university, and you yank out 100 bodies, 90% of them will have evidence of disease. 10% will die of natural causes, no evidence of disease. In other words, mechanical
It was like
failure.
the opposite of nature, the inverse or the opposite of,
Exactly.
yeah.
When you look at how long they live in ketosis, Americans live in ketosis 8% of our lives and 92% on sugar.
Right.
So, from this concept that sugar was bad, which it is, uh, came this high insulin resistance, and people got bigger and bigger and bigger. Because if you go into Google and you type in photos of American in 1930, they're all thin. And it wasn't until Ansel Keys, a professor at Harvard, had promoted the so-called standard American diet, which is 50% carbs, 40% protein, and the so-called 10% low-fat diet,
Right.
uh, that we began by, he started this idea in 1963. By 1970, the emergence of obesity, the emergence of cancers, the emergence of autoimmune diseases began to take a rise. And which is where we are today, with 72% of Americans overweight, being driven by sugar. And the Center for Disease Control reports the average U.S. citizen eats 150 pounds of sugar a year,
Wow.
and as high as 300 pounds per year. Now, if you think about that, that's between a half a pound and a pound of sugar a day. Now, that's hidden sugar. That's
Right.
bread, your bagels, your cornflakes.
Everything.
So,
Yeah, it's ironic that the obesity epidemic might have its genesis with a low-fat diet launch. That's bad poetic. That's bad poetry.
yeah, it is bad poetry.
Yeah.
Funny thing is that by February of 2020, the United States Congress nullified that standard American diet by
Yeah.
congressional act. Congress voted the food pyramid out. It is no longer part of the United States Department of Agriculture, the
Oh,
USDA
good. Okay.
recommendation. So the government recommends that you do not follow a low fat diet anymore.
Well, at least we're making a good course correction.
Yeah,
So how can let's talk a little bit about, most people get introduced to this via their personal mission to lose some weight, specifically lose fat. But if you want to talk a little bit about just how it aids in fat loss and the other things that happen, because there are some other super positive things that you touched on already that are equally important, maybe even more important than fat loss, but definitely connected to fat loss with any, inflammation and insulin resistance, that type of stuff. So just at a high level, just talk about the usefulness of using these ketones in your effort to lose body fat.
right. Uh, okay, so there's a really famous study that looked at comparing different methods of losing weight. One was, and this was a comparison between the standard American diet, okay, which is 50% carbs, 40% protein, and 10% fat, the so-called low-fat diet, as opposed to the classic ketogenic diet, which is 70% fat, 25% protein, and 5% carbs. Okay, basically the exact opposite,
Right.
low-fat diet. And patients were followed out uh, for a year, and they were both given a low calorie diet. So the way to understand weight loss is it doesn't matter what you do. The most important thing is you have to eat fewer calories than you burn. Yeah, that's right.
Basic math.
So, so it's basic math. And this math, by the way, has been confirmed in 100 species, which includes a human. So every warm-blooded animal, this tells you that we all came from common cells. So every warm-blooded animal burns energy at 35 kcals per day per kilogram. So in other words, let's say you need 2,500 calories to maintain your weight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is the so-called ideal human. So if you ate less than 2,500 calories, you lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you ate 2,000 calories. So there's 500 calories net negative because your body requires 2,500. You ate 2,000. That 500 calories got burned. And where did it get burned from? It gets burned from your fat.
Mm.
So that's why you're burning your fat in a hypocaloric or less calories than you require every day. So that's part one.
Hmm.
Everybody will lose weight. Doesn't matter whether you're on an Atkins diet, SAD diet, or ketogenic diet. As long as you're eating less calories, you're going to lose weight. But the real question is, what are the benefits of one versus the other? Well, we know that when you're in ketosis and you're burning your fat, first of all, fat is inflammatory. Two, fat makes your brain actually operate, uh, you know, high levels of fat produce a lot of inflammasomes. So people who are overweight, if you just draw their blood, they have inflammatory molecules. Their joints are more inflamed. Their skin is more inflamed. Every part of them is more inflamed. And as you reduce the percentage of fat in your body, you get less inflammation. And on top of that, by having higher levels of ketones, your brain, heart, and skeletal muscle actually operate better. You think faster, you are stronger, and you have more endurance from your heart. Why does this make sense? Well, think about it. In the wild, an animal that's starving is running on a fuel that produces more energy to the heart, skeletal muscle, and brain so that that person can outsmart, outstrength,
Food.
out endure their prey.
Yeah.
They got to eat to live. They
Yeah.
got to go run down the road, jump on something, kill it, and eat it.
Yeah.
So the only way they're going to do that is if they're faster, smarter, and have more endurance. And so that's what you take advantage of when you're in ketosis and or when you're eating a ketogenic diet, or even better yet, by drinking ketones.
Oh, that's awesome. So, how long after you drink ketones does it take for the magic to start, like positive things to start happening? Is this like you have to take them for drink ketones for 10 days, 5 days, 5 hours? Remember, people
Yeah.
don't, this
So
is, yeah,
yeah, so it depends on what you want to do.
yeah,
Okay. If you just and for instance, we for weight loss, you gotta follow all the right steps. You got to
right.
eat low calorie diet. You got to eat either higher fats or higher proteins and reduce your carbs so you don't stimulate insulin. Okay. And so to get the weight loss benefit, it takes a real, concerted effort. Okay. Just like it doesn't matter whether you're eating low a standard American diet with high carbs, you just got to lower your calories. But the benefits of the ketones are those other things I just talked about. But to get an effect from ketones, you can get it instantly, 40 minutes. Example, okay? So Earl had told me that you guys were interested in like athletic performance and stuff like that. So we took a pizza eating kid who's 18 years old, uh, who goes to school at the University of California, but on the side he's a semi-professional e-gamer,
Okay.
and we had him drink one round of our exogenous product 45 minutes before a game, before e-gaming. And actually, we did it on his training modules as well. And his scores went up over a 60-day period of about 300%. His reflex time on his hands increased 40%. His eye movements on
Hmm.
tracked by the camera were a lot faster. So he was just faster in e-gaming. And but this is a guy who eats a lot of carbs, a typical college student
Yeah.
downing a lot of pizza. And And all I told him to do is don't eat pizza on the day of a competition and drink our ketones 40 minutes before you start or finish your thing 40 minutes before you start. Now, we took Larry Sanders, who's a former NBA player. I think he played for the Milwaukee Bucks. And his NBA lifetime free throw record history is he has a 50%er at the line. And we gave him ketones. At the end of the first week, he went to 62% on to free throw from 50 to 62%. And and at the end of 2 weeks, he went to 71%.
Wow.
He changed his free throw accuracy from 50% to 71% at the end of 2 weeks, drinking this our product an hour before he did the throws. And he did 20 throws a day that we measured. Last but not least, we took Jason Collins, who and his twin brother, Jared, used to play for Stanford, and then they both played for professional NBA. And Jason came to me and wanted to lose weight, and he lost 75 pounds, okay, and became only about 5 or 10 pounds heavier than his prime weight when he was playing basketball for Stanford.
Mhm.
And he doesn't play basketball anymore, but he does work for the NBA. And he was saying that his endurance playing tennis and his accuracy of serving all got a lot better.
It's amazing. And I love the fact that you're highlighting the point that a lot of athletic performance happens in the brain. I like that because a lot of even speed, this is a conversation I've had with a lot of fighters that, people think speed is a function of muscular skeletal ability, when a lot of it actually happens in how fast the connectivity can happen in your brain,
That's
how
right.
fast you can react.
That's
So
right.
so this is great, and I hope that a lot of athletes get this. So listening to you speak, I know that some parents may get this. What about high school athletes and people that are, not necessarily kids, but young adults? I mean, are there any like thresholds of age that people should be before ketones should be considered, or is this an adult thing?
That's a really good question for which is a very sort of a confusing answer, okay? But let's talk about ketone safety,
Yeah. Okay.
okay? And then we'll talk about ketones for safety. So, in ketone safety, ketones have been around for 100 years.
Mm,
The very first time ketones were given was by a guy named Dr. Wildy at Johns Hopkins University in 1924. He gave ketones to a young 8-year-old girl who had seizures. And lo and behold, the seizures got better.
mm,
And why is that? Because conduction in the brain speeds up 30 to 40% when you drink ketones.
interesting.
Now, even today, 100 years later, children who have seizures that don't respond to prescription medications, they still use ketosis to control drug resistant seizures 100 years later. And in these 100 years, we have given ketones to humans orally, topically, and intravenously. So, safety profile of ketones is unbelievable. The biggest caveat is type 1 diabetes. Cannot do that. Now, because of the way the generally regarded as safe documents are, ketones for consumers, our package indication says that you should be over the age of 18.
Okay.
Unless you, of course, you have a doctor, a pediatrician, or somebody else. And our products have been used in young children, but we only allow that to be a discussion between the patients and their doctors and pediatricians.
Good advice. Good advice. And I hope people are taking note of that.
Right. So, we do not we don't think that women should be uh, taking ketones when they're breastfeeding
Right.
and or when they're pregnant. Okay, so those are the real indications of what we allow. That being said, there's a lot of science around neurology and ketones, in particular, traumatic brain injury. So ketones tend to reduce inflammation in the brain. So if you got jarred or you
Hmm.
got hit in the head or you're not wearing you got bopped in the head, even if you're wearing a helmet, concussions, there's a lot of articles that talk about ketosis and concussions. And again, it's something that we would encourage them to have a conversation with their neurologist or a physician, their a trauma specialist, sports medicine people, because many of these people are familiar with the role of ketosis in traumatic brain injury, brain fog, uh, long COVID, all of these things, which are disorders of brain metabolism associated with either trauma or an infection. Uh,
Yeah.
Generally, ketones are thought of uh, as adjuvant. They improve conduction, they reduce inflammation, and they can be very valuable. But again, we stipulate that physicians really should be guiding this kind of therapy. It's not do it yourself
Yeah.
uh, concussion treatment.
Yeah. And I think that's really good advice, but that's very exciting, especially in the world of combat sports. Anything that's neuroprotective, I think will become more and more normalized as we try to, do the best we can to make sports safer, right?
Yeah, that's right, and that's
Without
what
completely eliminating contact, which is never going to happen because that's kind of what makes the sport, right?
yeah
Interesting.
goes back to the Romans, right?
Yeah, this has been really really good. I can tell you here at Hydration Station we've had a 100%. Oh, I haven't even given you results. So we've had 100% results from the people that have done our metabolic reset. And for those that are you just tuning in, we have a 3-day fast supported by ketones, and then people migrate from that into a controlled diet supported by ketones, depending upon what their longer term goals are. I was actually able to lose 10 pounds of actual body fat. At the same time, I gained 3.5 pounds of lean body mass, which at 60 is a pretty hard thing to do. So I credit a lot of that to the magic, if you will. I like using words like that, but the magic slash science of ketones. So I appreciate it. You were definitely one of the most interesting people I've met in last year. Glad we had a fast and furious kind of connection. And I'm glad that we were a part of the Keto 5 family.
Yeah, we certainly really appreciate all of your knowledge and helping us out there. And there's anything you guys need, I'm certainly available to help you. Uh, Giving talks like this is not a problem. There's a lot of different subjects. The science is really evolving quickly, and
Yes.
um, and I want to say one other thing about hydration. Since you're running the hydration station, remember there are lots of very useful minerals in our ketone salts. There's magnesium, there's calcium, there's potassium and sodium. And when you're out hard working, you're going to lose a lot of those electrolytes, and you can use our product to supplement and bring back that hydration, plus give you some energy better than sugar. You know, so
This has been great. And we're huge fans. So thank you so much for taking the time this morning. We may have, as we get feedback from people that watch this, we may, if I can get enough questions in a area that's worth a second conversation, I will reach out and would love to have you back. But thank you so much for taking the time to share with us this morning.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Have
Thank
a
you,
good
Dr. Wolf.
day.
Take care.
Bye bye.